Hey everybody, it's Andy Ballister, the Chief Product Officer and co-founder of EyePop.ai. Today I'm really excited to talk to you about one of our new features, and we're going to be talking about EyePop abilities today. And so an ability is a way to solve a computer vision problem just using prompt and configuration instead of model training. And so what we're going to be doing today is a use case that we've been solving for a client. But in this use case, we have a marketplace that where users are uploading a lot of imagery, and what they want to do is filter out the first pass of AI imagery. And so if somebody has generated images on AI, often they are watermarked, and at least from a first pass, we want to discover the watermark in an image and put that in a separate bucket and flag it. And so to do that, we need to understand, hey, does this image have a watermark? And so there are some examples on this page, but we're going to take a look at this as an example. This is an AI generated image from Nano Banana. It has the Gemini AI watermark on it. And so we want to discover this photo as something that is AI generated watermark. We also have this as a negative example. This is AI art, or this is the art that we want to allow on this marketplace. It has a signature at the bottom in the same sort of style of this. And so we want to make sure that we're not filtering out things like this, where they may have a watermark or a signature in the bottom, but it's not the watermark that we care about. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start by creating an EyePop ability that is a prompt and configuration specifying our task here, which is to detect these watermarks. Then we're going to test that ability against a sample data set that we've put together. And that's really easy. A lot of it's automated on the EyePop platform. And then we're going to show how you would take the new ability that you've created and use our SDK to do inference on new images that come into the marketplace. So let's get started. Okay, great. Now we are over on our EyePop dashboard. And so I've signed in and logged into EyePop. And here I'm going to scroll down to the abilities tab. I'm going to click on that. Now you can see one of the ones I've run already, but we're going to start here from scratch and we're going to create a new ability. And so I'm going to click on create ability. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to give our ability a name. And this name I'm just calling detect nano watermark. I've added a description here and I've added a task. And what tasks are the type of thing we're trying to solve. And in this case, I essentially want a tag on this image to come back and say watermark or no watermark. You can have lots of different tags that you care about in using classify image. In this case, it's a really binary operation. I just want one or the other. And so we're going to build a prompt that supports that task. And we're going to use, we're going to tell EyePop that's what we're trying to do by saying classify image. Now, in other videos, we're going to be going over how to find events in videos. So different things that I care about. And one of the examples that we give is fall detection. Detect if a person or a patient is falling down in a video. That's an example of what find event could be. You can also detect if things are on screen. So tell me, which parts of this video have my logo on screen or have a particular player or product on screen. So that would all be in the find events. And then describe image and video allows me to upload media and get a description back. This is really good for metadata searching if you want to create like a video search and actually get the search to not just identify videos that have the qualities that I'm looking for, but the actual time segments that those qualities appear in, or that product appears in, or the player, et cetera. So all great stuff for different sorts of tasks here. We're adding to this list all the time. So I'm going to keep going and I'm going to continue here. Now, I want to make sure that this prompt and configuration that I'm creating in my ability works in production. And so And in this case, if I can identify at least 90% of the time when that AI watermark is happening, and I am good about bubbling up, anytime it happens, and not essentially not skipping when there's a false negative for this. That's what I'm looking for. I don't care if I have to look through as a human a couple extra images, but I want to cut the search space down of, instead of having myself looking at every user uploaded image coming into the system, if I can be sure that I'm getting the ones that matter, I can take a quick look and review and say, nope, that doesn't belong on our platform, or this does belong on our platform. That would be fantastic. And so in this case, I want to test that. And so in order to test that, we need to create a data set. Now, I have some data sets prepared already, but I'm going to hit new data sets. So we're going to see how you would create that from scratch for this task. Now, data sets will look like different metadata and information depending on the task that you're doing. And so we've made that really simple by just bringing you through a different wizard every time. Everything we're doing here today can also be done through our SDK. And so we have SDK functions for all of this, or API endpoints to integrate directly into your workflow if you don't want to use the UI here. And in this case, we're going to add labels. Now, labels, I have to be very specific of how these labels are put together. And so because I want everything to match, I want these labels to match with my prompt. I want these labels to match with how I've already classified my imagery. Okay, so I'm going to give the first label, we're going to call this watermark, and that's what matches the folders I've already sorted my example imagery in. So that's perfect. And I'm going to call the other one no watermark. Now, there's multiple ways to think about this bifurcation of watermark versus no watermark. I'm using explicit class labels in here for the negative. You could also think about images can be tagged with nothing. And so if there's a watermark there, you can tag it with watermark. If there isn't, you could tag it with nothing. Just two different methodologies. I've found that for starting out and building your prompts, it's actually easier to do it this way, where you're explicitly giving a negative class for the things that you don't want as your earmark class. And so if I was looking for a product in here, it'd be product and no product. But you can certainly do that as you evolve like your prompting style to have it respond with just watermark and nothing. So I'm going to move on, but that's how we're going to set up our class labels here. We have a default prompt here. And so the concept with the default prompt is this is a good starter template. And the thing you fill in here is the description of what your class looks like. So if we're going to tag this an image with watermark, what does that mean? What are the visual features that you would look for as a human to describe to somebody else? Hey, Nana Banana, it has this 4-pointed star as a watermark. It's usually gray. It's usually in the bottom right corner. Hey, can you help me find those things? That's how I would describe it to another human. So that's actually a good place to start for creating a prompt. Think about all of the features that you would have to communicate of somebody seeing this thing for the first time. So I've actually gone through and created a prompt, so I'm going to cut and paste that in right now. Okay, great. And so there are a couple of things that I want to point out in this prompt, and forgive me for the presentation here, but we're giving in the beginning some context as to what this task is. We are also giving class descriptions on what a watermark is. We're assigning no watermark in all other cases, and so very much like positive case, negative case. And then we only want to return one word as the final answer. That's how it works with the rest of the SDK and structured data. This also reduces the cost of running this model. When you can constrain the output of these models, they'll actually run quicker because they're not having come up with explainer text after your answer here. And so those are kind of the three macro features of this prompt. I encourage you to experiment on your own on this one, but and we'll have a lot of examples in the Abilities Hub to kind of see different prompts and how we think about different problems. Now, for this task, we have two models that we can use. We have small and we have Qwen 3. In this case, I want to use Qwen 3. It has better accuracy. I can put more context into my prompt, and we're not running this on video, and so I don't need the speed that I would get from small necessarily for this task. I'm willing to wait for a little bit better accuracy here. On the image size, you have to think about, so when the ability gets your media, we're going to resize that to a standard size. And so we're going to either, we're going to shrink down the input media to some window, and the window is described here. And so for most use cases where it's a big macro level feature of the image, like the main thing in the image, I can get away with the small 512 by 512 size. And this is looking at things like, imagine taking a picture of a car. The car is the main subject of that image. As long as it takes up enough of the real estate of the image, then I'll have no problems on the smaller size. Now, in this particular use case, I'm looking for a relatively small feature. And so I may be able to get away with a different size here, but I'm going to go for the largest size to start off with because I'm looking for a relatively small feature in that image. And so this is something you can play with over time. I can, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create this ability with this large image size. I'm going to run this prompt against my test set. And if I get good results, then I may want to consider, downgrading the image size here so that I can save on compute. And so we'll choose large for this one. And so now, because I've created a new data set, I'm being taken right into the new data set flow. And what I've done to prepare for this step is I can see I have two labels, and this is what we put in the previous step, watermark and no watermark. And so I prepared folders of images that have, images that have watermark, they're in the watermark folder. Images that are negative examples that don't have watermarks are in the no watermark folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to straight drag and drop from my Finder into this window and upload those two folders. Now, because the folder name matches these labels, it's going to auto tag those images as they are coming in. And that's just going to save on some hand labeling work that I would need to do in EyePop. You don't need huge data sets for evaluation. I would probably use in a production use case a bigger data set than this, so that I can get enough of the diversity of images that I might have in production through the system, so I know it works in a wide range of use cases. But I think this is good for demonstration purposes. And so one of the things we can do is we can auto label. And so we have a first pass model that's going to do its best to label against what you are doing here. If you haven't labeled your data yourself, and that's really handy for bigger data sets, but I'm going to skip that for now because we don't need to use that. Now, I'm brought into the human review step, and I don't have to do much here because as I can see, I've got this nice check mark. All of my images are already labeled, and we can see this one is the example images from 4.4. Definitely has the 4-point star, definitely tagged with watermark. And so what this data set is I'm telling the ability evaluator, hey, here's a data set of what I would expect the ability to do. And next we're going to try out, hey, how well did that ability actually do? And so I can see I have a bunch of watermark images as we go a little bit further down the list here. I can see there's also no watermark images like this one. And remember, we're just looking for that star there. So I don't really need to do anything in this step. I've already have all my labels here. So I'm going to go over to the next one. And so I'm going to take a look. I have 40 examples. I have 40 reviewed, which means they have some sort of tag. Now this is yelling at me because I don't have any explicit or implicit negative examples with, like, say, no tag. And so I'm running my negatives a little bit different, so that's fine. No worries there. But I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, this looks good. If I needed to go back and review my different examples, like maybe this one was tagged wrong for some reason, I could go back and review. But other than that, I'm going to just hit run evaluation. And that's going to bring me back to my EyePop abilities page. Now, okay, so here is an ability I ran an evaluation of earlier today. Let's take a look at the different performance evaluation metrics here. And so I got a 92% for my performance score. This is the F1 score if you've used F1 score before. And that's a mix of the recall and precision of what we achieved as part of this evaluation. Now, what all those things mean. So recall is it penalizes if I didn't find something when I was supposed to. So for example, taking a look at this particular class, Watermark, when the human gave the ground truth of Watermark, did we find it or not? And I don't care if you called other things that weren't watermark, as long as we found all of the watermarks there, that's what the recall is. And so I can see I gave 20 examples to both watermark and non-watermark. So I could see 15% of those examples did not get picked up on this one. And so when I evaluate how do I do the next best prompt, one of the ways I can do that is by going back to my data set, and I can go take a look at what did I say the ground truth was, what did the model predict, and look at the specific error modes on the images where it did not find that watermark. And so we can go back through that and do a deep dive in another session, but I want to keep this particular workshop moving. And so you can go through and either use our SDK to discover which images were ground truth watermark and not predicted as watermark, or there are some callouts in the UI of how to evaluate that on your data set. And then on the no watermark side, we didn't have that problem on recall. In fact, it was the opposite problem. And we would expect that because this is a very symmetric data set with like even number of watermark, no watermark, and it's a bifurcated use case. So I would expect, each class to have some dependence on the other because it's either going to give me one or the other. So in here, I can see it is very good at finding no watermark, and there are some images in here that it did not say watermark on when in fact there was a watermark. And so if I wanted to do a deep dive on how to adjust my prompt, I could just look through all of those images and mismatches and figure out what's the next step here. Maybe there's something in there that I didn't describe appropriately, or maybe some of those images are hard to tell the watermark on because of some other feature within the bottom right corner. And so I would want to go take a look there. The other thing I can do, and this is a feature that is coming soon, is use an agent to take a description of all of those watermarks or mismatch photos and see why might, from a description point of view, the model not pick up on these particular images and refine that prompt using an agent. And so that's also the subject of another video, and so that's going to be coming soon. So stay tuned for that one. We'll show you exactly how to use agents to refine your prompt. But we're going to tell you exactly how to use agents to refine your prompt. It's going to be built into the system. You'll also be able to use that either through our SDK or the UI here to get to the next version of your prompt. But let's say for this particular use case, I'm happy with the results that I've gotten here. And so I want to start using this into my product. I can always refine my prompt later and just change the alias that I'm calling here. And so I'm going to copy this alias and I'm going to bring that over to a notebook, and we'll show an example in Python. Okay, great. And So here is our Python notebook that is example code included on our Abilities Hub page. I've changed this slightly to use the Google Colab secrets in this one, but otherwise everything's the same. There is a lot in here in this notebook about using our SDK to do all of the things that we just did on the EyePop dashboard, to define the abilities and create abilities from scratch. But all we're going to use this notebook today is to just get inference on different example imagery. And so you see two different images here below. One clearly has that nano watermark and one does not. And so we want to see if our ability knows the difference between these two. And so what I'm going to do is I'm first going to get my account UUID and I'm going to get my API key from my dashboard. And those are really easy. I can click my name at the top and both of those are really available. I'm going to add that to the notebook and let's start running some of these cells. And so first I want to install the SDK. And I'm using our 3.12 version of our Python SDK. And so this is going to run and install that there. Okay. Okay. And now I'm going to run my, authentication portion. And so this is just loading up those variables for connection. I am going to set my namespace. And, this doesn't have to be done like this, but because we're using that namespace in multiple cells, I like calling this out separately and explicitly. In normal integration code, I would have this maybe an environment variable or just have it as part of the aliases that I'm calling. Okay, and so now we get into the fun stuff here. And so let's take a look at what this code is. So first, I'm just using two different publicly available images out there just to test this out. And so you can run EyePop inference on publicly accessible URLs. You can upload a file into it. You can you can upload an asset that is part of your data set. There's a lot of modalities by which to get images and videos into the system. In this use case, we're just doing URLs that are publicly accessible. Normally, what I see our clients doing is uploading files directly from their backend system into the into EyePop, and then in other use cases they're actually uploading streams into from cameras directly into EyePop. And so when we start talking about finding events in video, that's one of the exciting things is connecting a live stream to that. Okay, so we have our two photos. Very simple little array here, nothing to speak of on that one. And now we get into the meat of the code. And you can see this is not very large. To do inference, it's just a couple lines of code. We're going to import our EyePop SDK and some of the types that we need. I'm also grabbing JSON so that we can display that JSON nicely. And now I get into, okay, how do I actually call my ability? And in this one, we have the default EyePop detect nano watermark that we talk about on the Abilities Hub. Okay, and so I've replaced that with my personal ability, so I could check either one. In this case, let's use the EyePop one. I think that'll be more fun. But if you want to check out your own ability, I'll just call out some parts of the alias. And so we structure alias names as your namespace, the task, and then your name of what that ability is. And then there's a colon and a version. Now that version can look like a version number, and that version number you'll see on your EyePop dashboard, or if you call the list abilities, you'll get all this back from that SDK endpoint. You can also tag specific versions of these abilities with human readable tags. And so if we go back to the previous example, you can see we've released this as latest. And what that allows me to do is to then, in the back end, I integrate with this as latest. In the back end, I can always change what latest is pointing to. And we'll do in a couple other videos like a lot about switching from different environments. I could have a staging tag, I could have a production tag, and we make that really easily through the Ability SDK. For this, we're we're just pointed at latest right now. And so this is the standard one. And so this is the standard EyePop namespace. We're going to be releasing quite a few example abilities. And so stay tuned on the abilities hub. You'll be able to see all the abilities we released there. And this is something that I can use out of the box. And then I have to connect to the EyePop SDK. And so to connect, I'm going to call the EyePop.SDK, and I want a worker endpoint. And worker endpoint is anytime I'm going to be doing inference on an image, video, or live stream, I want to first authenticate into that. And so I'm going to give it my API key. And then I have this variable endpoint that will serve as our worker endpoint. And so I then set the pop from above. And what this pop is doing is a very simple pop. It's saying, go do inference and go do it on this ability. Now, there is tons of other things I can do with this pop architecture. Later, I could do something like, maybe I only care about this ability when I also see something else. So I may want to do like person detection first, and then do like this watermark, or I may want some other information about this image from a different ability, and I want that all collated back every time I do inference. Do both abilities. I can do all that with this syntax, and that'll be a fun one to do another video about all the different ways I can combine pop components together. But in this one, I just have one component. It's running the ability that we talked about, and so I'm gonna go ahead after authenticating and set that into my endpoint. So now the endpoint knows what I want to do as a task by this definition. Now I'm going to loop through our two example URLs, and I'm going to run inference on both of those. And so one at a time, I'm going to create a job. That job is loading up the URL, and then I'm going to predict based on the ability that I defined here on that job. And so I'm waiting for those results to come back in. I'm going to print the URL that we just looked at, and then I'm going to print the resulting JSON that comes back from EyePop. And then when we're all done, we're printing done. And so I'm going to run that right now, and we're going to take a look at the results. Okay, and we're all set with the results. So let's take a look at what we got. So for the first image, we received back classes, and the label of the class we got was no watermark. Now with abilities, we're not going to get a usable confidence score, and so we report that as 1, so that works with other thresholding code, because you can mix and match different types of models together, but this particular model doesn't give it confidence back. But we can see that that's great. Okay, I got my no watermark, perfect. Some of the other pieces of this result is I get the seconds. Now for images, this doesn't matter. This is for video use cases. I can see the source height and width. This source ID, I don't really have to worry about. That's more of an internal system call. This system time, again, doesn't matter for images. This is more video use case as well as this timestamp. So I would say the usable things are the classes here. And then this height and width I can use for a wide variety of things coming back if I didn't already have that data. But I got the result I wanted here. On the second image where there was a watermark, I correctly got watermark back. And so I'm excited about these results. And so I would go through and maybe test some other things from production, or I put this into a limited release and start to get a sense of how well is my ability doing, where does it fail, and where it fails, I can update that prompt. When I'm ready to upgrade my ability, I can change the version number here, or I could repoint what the latest tag means to a new version of that ability. But overall, like we're done and we're doing inference. And so we didn't have to do any model training. We gave a very minimal amount of data for it to run evaluation on. And we got to a result that I'm happy with for this use case. And so what are the things that you'd like to find in images that would be helpful to your business? So comment and tell us what you would like to see in these videos. I'd love to learn more about what you're interested in finding in image and video, and what would be useful to your business or your workflow. Because we're going to do a lot more of these abilities, put them out there and show you how we did them. And so thanks so much for your attention today. And please check us out at EyePop.ai. You can come in, create an API key, and get started right away. Thanks so much. Bye.